Welcome back, sixth graders. We are continuing Dragonwings today, and we're going to be starting in the middle of page 87. So the last time that we read, we were learning a lot about Windrider and Moonshadow's relationship, and things are progressing. And in the last couple of pages, Uncle and Windrider have been kind of fighting, and Uncle's upset because his son, Black Dog, has been missing for a little while. So that's where we're going to start on page 87 in the middle where it says, but after 10 days. So find that, and here we go. But after 10 days, Black Dog still had not come back. It was White Deer who joined Father beside his ironing board. Black Dog's been gone a long time, White Deer said. Father's arm went back and forth rhythmically across the sheet, smoothing out the wrinkles. Yes, he has, he grudged. He's never been away this long, White Deer added. Huh, Father grunted. Opium costs too much. He's never had enough money for a binge as long as this. Uh-huh. We ought to look for him. On the page. Father sighed and set the iron he had been using back onto the stove rack. He took off another one that had been heating there and wet his thumb to test it. I suppose we ought to, he said finally. That night after dinner, Lefty began our confrontation with Uncle. I understand that Leopard Head is down from the North Country with his pockets full of money. I think I may get into a game. Leopard Head was a cook for the demons on some ranch up on the north. The point was that he was a member of the Brotherhood of Eternal Repose, nicknamed the Sleepers. It was their enemies and not the brothers, who rested eternally. The same brotherhood to which Black Dog belonged, and would be staying at their hall. If Black Dog was at the hall, Lefty could find out. If you see my worthless boy, Uncle grumbled, spit in his face for me. No one is worthless, Uncle, White Deer chided him gently. He comes the closest to it of any tang man I have ever seen. Uncle mopped his brow with his handkerchief. The air was still hot and steamy inside our building. He's probably too ashamed to come back, Handclap contributed. Yeah, that's it, White Deer said. He'll probably come back like a small dog with his tail slung between his legs. That boy knows no shame. He's still a member of the company. Ha! I've got a good mind to fire that boy. White Deer shrugged. You can't fire someone from the company unless your two partners agree, and Handclap and I will never do that. But Uncle was still too proud to say he wanted help to look for his boy. None of you are to look for him. Understand? White Deer looked at his friend for a long time. Well, there's no objection if I take a walk, is there? Uncle sat for a long time in his chair, drumming his fingers on the chair's arms. No, I guess I can't keep you from going on walks. He pushed himself up from his chair suddenly. He picked his hat from a peg. I think I'll visit Whirlwind. Haven't seen that old fool in a long time. Whirlwind was also a sleeper. Uncle walked down the steps. The bell tinkled as he slammed the door. We ought to split up the rest of the Tang people's town, Father said. I'll take the opium dens. No, let me, White Deer said. No, Father said. It makes more sense for you to go among your friends in the restaurants and ask after Black Dog. He's got to eat sometime. Handclap, you can cover the brothels. You know them all so well. Handclap looked embarrassed when we all laughed. Not that well, he grumbled. Leave the gambling places to me. Lefty slipped a silver dollar out of his pocket. Father caught his wrist. This is serious business, Lefty. Lefty smiled. Relax. I will not use this for gambling, only for buying drinks. There is nothing like a wine to loosen tongues. All right. Father let go of his wrist. What about me? I asked. Boy, you stay here. I want to go with you. Father shook his head. Where I'm going, nobody should have to go. What would your mother say? Before I left, she told me to look after you. You'll need someone to watch your back for you. The boy's quite right, Lefty said. Some dopey may just be desperate enough to tackle you. Father drummed his fingers on the countertop. It's very ugly, boy. You'll think you're in the court of hell. All the more reason to have someone you can trust there. Father cocked his head to one side. I do think you've grown an inch since you've come here. More like a foot, I said. You've been using Handclap's ruler again, Father laughed. Let's get started. He jammed my hat onto my head. We headed for the alley that is known as the Devil's Kitchen. There was a different kind of smell to the alley. It was a sweet yet bad kind of smell. We paused at the mouth of the alley. Overhead the moon shone through the bars of the fire escape, and it kept pace with us as we walked inside, like some restless animal pacing in its cage. It was pitch black in the alley mouth. Without the moonlight, we would have stumbled over the man who lay moaning against the wall. Is he? I began. No, Father said, just trying to sleep. If he had any money, he'd be inside. We turned the corner of the building into a kind of courtyard formed by that building and two others. One gas lamp lit the yard. Father crept his hand on my shoulder. Keep close to me, he cautioned. We started down the steps into a basement. A bald-headed man perched on a stool behind a counter, his feet inside the rungs. He acted as if we were in some kind of store. He was sipping a cup of tea with one hand while the other rested on his thigh. The rest of the basement was given over to beds, each of which had a little table beside it. On each table rested a nut oil lamp, which was used to heat up the pellet of opium before it was put into the long-stemmed pipe. Later, when I went into a demon hospital, it was to remind me very much of a scrubbed-up antiseptic opium den. On the straw mattresses, men lay in various positions, but of the faces I could see, each of them wore a moronic kind of grin. One man had just put his heated pellet into his pipe. His lips sucked happily at the pipe, which was as long as my arm. Each time he sucked, there was an evil kind of frying sound. The pellet was only good for several lungfuls, but that was enough. The air itself was thick with the smell of opium, and with stale sweat and vomit and urine. The man at the counter put a pellet down on the counter. I'm looking for my cousin, Father said. The man scratched his forehead with his left little finger. The casual gesture must have actually been some recognition sign. Father scratched the little finger on his right hand. You don't look like a brother, the man said. I'm not, Father said. But I once knew men from the Heavenly Order Brotherhood. That was back in 97, in the little city. The little city was what we called the demons' Sacramento, the provincial capital up to the north. I hear the fighting was messy, the man behind the counter said. What did you say your name was? I didn't say. Father looked around the room. Well, who are you looking for? A man called Black Dog. And he's your cousin? The man at the counter sat back, satisfied. So you're the man they call Windrider now. Is Black Dog here? No, but I'll send word to your laundry if he does come here. The man gestured towards a teapot. Have some tea? He offered, just as if we were in his home. No thanks, Father said, but I'd appreciate that word if he shows up. My pleasure, the man said. As we stepped outside, I turned to Father. What fighting? Never you mind, boy, Father said. We went to 3 other dens, but we had no luck. We were just coming out of the 3rd den when we saw 3 men appear in the courtyard. Father pressed me back against the door, so we were hidden in the shadowed doorway. They walked side by side, very deliberately. The 2 other men who were in the courtyard scuttled out of their way. The sound of the boots echoed hollowly off the walls. The man on the right jerked his head at a basement opium den we had yet to try. "The pig's in there." "Bring him out," said the man in the middle. Father tightened his hand on my shoulder, and he put his finger to his lips, telling me that I was to be silent. The man on the right disappeared into the den. There were protests from inside, and he reappeared a moment later, half carrying a man who was naked to the waist. 2 men followed him. "You can't just come breaking into our place like this and taking out one of our customers. You justices can't push us around even if you are the biggest. There are rules now. Every brotherhood has its own territory." The man in the middle held out his right hand. The man on his left lifted up his loose black shirt and pulled out the heavy pistol that he had tucked under his waistband. He handed it to the man in the middle. The man who had been protesting stopped and dropped to his knees. "We don't want to start a war with you, bloody hands, but we will if we have to," said the man in the middle. He nodded at the dopey who had been dragged out of the den. "This pig stole money from one of our foxes. He beat her up, too, so she wouldn't talk." "So that's how he got all of his money," said the other man from the den. The man on his knees got up and spat at the dopey. "Take him and good riddance. You can't get any lower than stealing money from a woman." The 2 men hurried back inside their den. The 3rd justice propped the dopey up against the railing that ran along the steps to the basement and stepped to one side. I saw it was Black Dog then. He looked up, confused, studying the 3 men for a moment until he recognized them. "I'll give Black Dog this much." He smiled, rather than being afraid. "Lead Hand," Black Dog said to the man in the middle, "I'm going to remember this in the next life, and I'm going to take definite pleasure in trumping every worm, cockroach, and fly that I meet. I'm sure one of them will be you." "I never stole any money from any fox," Lead Hand said. "Don't be so sure as to who's going to come back as what." Lead Hand cocked the pistol. You could hear the loud mechanical click. Suddenly I heard a shrill, piercing whistle from above me. I looked up to see Father with 2 fingers in his mouth. He emitted another whistle as I watched. It was a decidedly demonic talent. I don't think the gunmen would have mistaken Father's whistle for the sound of the police if they had been calm. But of course they were nervous and excited about the killing. The man on Lead Hand's left turned to run, but Lead Hand grabbed his arm. "The gun, you fool, the gun!" Dumbly, the young man let Lead Hand give him the gun. Then the 3 of them ran like mad for the alleyway. "Where did you learn to whistle like that?" I asked with open envy. "Something I picked up," Father said. "Think you could teach me?" "Yes, it might come in handy for you." Father started down the steps 3 at a time, running toward Black Dog, who laid sprawled across the railing, his legs spread out on the steps. He twisted his head up. He had difficulty focusing his eyes. But finally, he recognized Father. "You," he said. "Yes, me. We've come to take you back to the company." Father bent over and tried to help Black Dog to his feet, but Black Dog pushed Father's hand away. "Don't need," Black Dog mumbled. "Oh, hell," Father said. He swung his fist into Black Dog's jaw with a solid smack. Black Dog sagged on the railing. Father crouched and got Black Dog over his shoulders and walked up slowly up the steps. I was waiting for him at the top. "Get his hat and things," Father said. but I was staring up at Black Dog. "Remember," Father said, "he was a good man once. Now get his things." I got Black Dog's hat and shirt and joined Father, who had already started to walk toward the alley mouth. All right, that's where we'll stop today, and we'll pick up Chapter 5 tomorrow.